So when 7 million people took to the streets this weekend for the No Kings protests, one thing was very clear. The American people are deeply dissatisfied with the Trump administration. Now, the progressive candidate recruitment group Run for Something wants to harness engagement like that to help Democrats win in states where they've struggled. Politico reports the group is pitching donors on a $50 million 5-year effort to expand Democrats' footprint in battleground and red states outside the blue wall. Now, y'all have heard of the blue wall before, right? So, quote, throwing billions of dollars into top-of-the-ticket races in 26 and 28 may be short-term imperatives, but it can't be the only plan we execute in the next 4 years. It's essential we expand our map and prepare for a contentious post-census redistricting fight. I know a little bit about that. Amanda Littman, co-founder of Run for Something, joins us. Angela Carson is back with us.
Let's read a little more from that Run for Something memo. The subtitle of the memo is The Program Battle Up. One of the points is lift the bench in Arizona, North Carolina, Ohio, and Georgia. 2, grow the bench, Iowa, Nebraska, go Big Red, and Utah. 3, battle up long-term, Texas, Florida, Idaho, Mississippi, and Louisiana. We had a spirited conversation about this on our call earlier today, Amanda, because you know, campaigns used to be my life. You know, the chairman, literally, he has executed the strategy that has secured Republican power into this decade. He didn't know it was going to go to the crazy man, though, but that's another story. So I think that I think we all agree with you here that, like, yes, Democrats have to do more. My question is about how do you operationalize this? Because the alphabet committees, as I like to call them, the DSCC, the DCCC, the DNC, right? These are the entities, the DLCC, that control where the money goes. And particularly when we look at the DSCC and the DCCC, the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, these entities are getting involved in candidate selection. They are the decision makers on who gets funded and who doesn't. Sherry Beasley would be a senator from North Carolina today as we speak if Chuck Schumer would have given the go for the cash to be flowing in that North Carolina Senate race, but they didn't think she could win. They had other priorities and put it elsewhere, and now Democrats are still chasing a seat in North Carolina. So how do you operationalize this? Did you talk to Chuck Schumer? Did you send a memo over to these folks? And if you haven't, do you plan to do that? Because that is really where the power is lying here.
We talked with a whole bunch of folks at all the different levels of office, but I will say Run for Something's focus is really about the hyper-local. So eventually, some of the folks that we recruit to run for city council and school board and library board will be Senate candidates. We're seeing that play out now with Mallory McMorrow in Michigan, James Tallarico in Texas, Zach Walls in Iowa, Jennifer Jenkins in Florida, as well as gubernatorial candidates and congressional candidates across the country in both red and battleground states. But in a lot of these places, we don't have anyone to run for the eventual House seat in Idaho that will get drawn after the 2030 census. We don't have anyone besides Sherrod Brown who can really make Ohio competitive statewide. It's great that Roy Cooper is our Senate candidate in North Carolina this year. We should have a bench of 20 people who could run statewide in North Carolina. So that's what Run for Something is going to do over the next 5 years, is make sure that in all these places, we're building political infrastructure. We're winning locally. We're flipping places county by county and city by city so that in 2030 and 2032, when the DSCC and the SMP and the DTRIP and all the different committees get involved, they have a bounty of riches to pick from when they start recruiting candidates.
The last time that we had you on, Angela, we were talking about the value of the No Kings protests, and you said to us they're connective tissue, and there's, in addition to a dearth of candidates, a lack of connective tissue. And it would seem to me that what Amanda and Run for Something is arguing is valuable, both in terms of actually building that bench for Democrats, but also in terms of giving people something to rally around that isn't simply a rejection of Donald Trump.
Yeah, and that, you know, when you start to prop up these individuals, even if they're not running it, even if they just have an idea, like, yeah, I may actually run for something local. You know what they do? They go out and start to do things aligned with potentially running. They talk more, they do their own organizing. It becomes self-sufficient, self-sustaining. And that's why I think it's important, you know, to think about it as connective tissue. And I think this is very much tied in with the conversation we had in the first segment. You know, we were talking about the Ninth Circuit, 2 Trump judges. That's all across the country. They played a long game. about how they could put people at every level, even at the courts, how they're going to change the composition of the courts. And Trump did the same thing when it came to changing the composition of the hyperlocal, organizing and building power on the fringes. So there was a short-term play, right? The day-to-day news cycle, the next election in front of us, and then there was a longer-term play, how they seed the ground and incubate new talent, new ideas, and things that are more self-sustaining. And I really do see that as the benefit of it, is that as long as you get that energy and you have it somewhere, things like run for something are going to harness it, and that's that's the game. That's what civic engagement is.
That's exactly what it is. I don't even know if I have a question for you, to be honest, Amanda, because I just really admire the thinking. Because to Angelo's point, I think it's important to understand that on the Republican side, there was no, backroom meeting in which all of this was like carved out and decided. It occurred over a period of time, right, where certain things began to fall in place and the light bulb goes on and go, oh, well, that's a dot and that's a dot. What if you connect those two dots? Then that begets something a little bit better, something a little bit bigger, something a little bit more powerful. And so for me, when I was sharing with our team today, when I was state party chairman in 2000 in Maryland, and I'm in a state outnumbered 2-1. What races am I going to win? We only have like 12 seats in the state Senate and 42 in the state House out of, almost 200 legislators, right? Targeting. Identify your targets, right? Every political system, there's a weak spot. And what I would argue is that Democrats have not spent the time looking at the weak spots that are already existing around them. Apparently you are. The only thing I would say, I wouldn't talk about it too loud because you don't want to share every little plan you got. But I get the momentum where you're going in the thinking. Talk a little about the process of understanding what this new landscape that Trump and Republicans have created means for what comes next for Democrats, regardless of whether they're progressives or they're traditional, old school conservative Democrats. If you got the D behind your name and you're in a district that you think you can win, how do you help them do that?
So Run for Something runs the largest candidate pipeline in politics. Since we launched back in January 2017 on Trump's first inauguration day, we've had nearly 250,000 people raise their hands to say they want to run. More than 70,000 of them signed up just in the last 11 months. That's more people in the last 11 months than we had in the entirety of Trump's first term. So we have built a full soup to nuts program that helps people get from, maybe I might run for office one day, to on the ballot, to endorsed by our PAC, all the way through to Election Day. We've helped more than 1,500 people win local offices in 49 states plus DC, all millennials and Gen Z, really reflective of their community. We know that a candidate in New York is going to run a little bit differently on maybe slightly different issues than one in Alaska or Texas or Iowa, and that's okay. We're aligned on values and flexible on how those show up as policy. What we have seen is these local candidates, who are by and large young people, are really effective communicators. They are really authentic. They know how to cut through the crap, and they can really connect with their voters in a way that I think top of the ticket Democrats can't always do because they don't have that personal relationship. I believe that with the work that we've laid out through this 5-year plan, we can do the same and even more and lay Democrats up for 2032 to have many, many pathways to victory. Whereas if we don't do this, based on every possible research we have seen by experts, the Democrats' possible 25 different paths to victory we had in 2024, which we availed ourselves of none of, we could be down to maybe 5.
Yeah.
Okay, less than a minute left. Part of this memo talks about the willingness of embracing independent candidates. And I wonder if you think in a world that is no longer Democrat, Republican, but really MAGA and non-MAGA, if an independent candidate can break through with some of those MAGA folks?
It depends on whether or not the establishment, like the DCCC, the DSGC, and the donors are able to accept the fact that you can harness kinetic energy even if it doesn't have your partisan affiliation with it. And that is the biggest socialization that has to happen at the institutional level. Trump and the Republicans adapted faster to that reality. They saw the benefits of the Tea Party. They obviously had a media ecosystem behind them. MAGA became the next thing. They were able to harness kinetic energy that was outside of the strict apparatus of the institutions. And that's going to be the real determining factor here, is whether or not we can harness it as well.
That's the rub. as Michael Steele would say. Angelo Corazon, Amanda Littman, thank you both for your time tonight. Next